Welcome to a little insight into how I completed this Wonder Woman drawing. This is a really old sketch and I wanted to make it into something complete. So what you've got on the left side is the full drawing, and then on the right you're going to see the drawing move around as a close-up. So I'm using the symmetry function here in Procreate to design the bracer, which I wanted to be both beautiful and still strong. And you can see that once I've drawn it, I've actually then used the warp tool to put it onto the bracer, but of course the design wasn't big enough to cover it. So I'm designing it on the fly here, just trying to keep in mind the original kind of two symmetrical drawings I did. The one with the birds is actually for the chest piece, and you'll see me put that on there. There you go. The warp tool is really good for that because, of course, there's lots of curves and shapes there, and you can see me adjusting it and kind of pulling it around to make it fit. And although this isn't a traditional Wonder Woman design, I'm always conscious of trying to keep the W somewhere in it. So there's just little echoes of that W between the breasts, and then on the belt there you can see that kind of W shape underneath the design. So what you can see here is me kind of mapping out the shapes a little bit more accurately. I'm going over the line drawing and I'm sticking to it for the most part, but as the drawing goes on you'll see me find little anatomical issues that just weren't quite right. So at this point it's really fine detail on the head that I'm fiddling around with, and then you can see me adjusting the lines for the muscles. It's so important that you get those lines right, because when they're just even a small amount off, it doesn't feel right. Even though sometimes it looks okay, but it feels off, and that's the difference between a good drawing and a great one. And there's a few problems with this one, I think, even after it's finished. But for the most part, I was pretty happy with this. You can see me adjusting the design on the gauntlet because of the rotation of her arm. I feel like we wouldn't be able to see quite so much. That's why you saw it kind of edge along. And then I've invented more of that design on the fly as well. So once that gauntlet was done, I had started moving back up to the top of the picture. Just fiddling around with the waistline design, and then going back to the hair curls, which in the original drawing were really rough and they just didn't work, some of them. So you can see me trying to perfect that now. Now I'm at the point where I'm getting rid of the underdrawing, and you can use multiply and all sorts of things for that, but I didn't want to get rid of it completely. I wanted to keep some of that texture underneath the drawing. So the lasso of truth here is just a series of loops. And in Procreate, if you don't know, if you draw a shape, usually a circular shape for me, if you hold the pen on the canvas at the end of the shape, it will offer you a really smooth version of what you've drawn, and then you can adjust it by moving the pen around. So with the lasso looking better, in my head at least, I just start looking into the various other parts of the drawing. I moved the shoulders a little bit there, changing a tricep, change the shoulder again. It's a lot of drawing is about getting the main thing down and then just trying to refine what's there into something that you're really happy with. And that can sometimes be really easy. Other times you'll find that you fight with the drawing, and sometimes, depending upon how far you've gone with that piece of artwork, it's not worth that fight. There's something wrong with the composition, or anatomically you've done something that's so off that it's better to actually redraw it from scratch, and then hopefully you'll address that in that process. Sometimes you don't. So adding some flat colours now the way I draw sometimes is to put flats on separate layers. And you'll have seen other people do this. It just gives you a bit more control, but it also makes the drawing more finicky because you have multiple layers, and it's really important in that situation that you name your layers. And if you don't do it at the beginning, I promise you it will come back to get you in the end, and it's worth that effort. Because sometimes when you're drawing, you enter, or at least I do, a bit of a flow state where time just starts to disappear, and hours will pass, or half an hour. And it's when that occurs that you just get this urge to keep going and keep going. But that's when you start adding layers, and before you know it, you've got a significant number, and you don't know what they are. So you end up ticking them on and off, trying to resolve the issues. Going back to the drawing now, you can see that I wasn't happy with the lips, and I must have redrawn them 8 or 9 times. It just, I couldn't get the expression right. I wanted something stoic but not sad, something positive but not a smile, and I think I eventually got there. So you can see me initially here, I was going to paint it with more realistic tones, and then I just decided at some point while I was doing the skirt, I think it was, that this just wasn't working for me. There was something that didn't feel right. So you saw me there just throwing really hard shadows, and I just went with this aesthetic instead, where you have these really strong divides between light and shadow. And those can be difficult because if you get that dividing line in the wrong place, again, it makes it feel off. You can see on the shoulder, it looks a bit off. There's something not quite right there. And I think I adjusted a few times. And you'll see me adding bits of shadow here and there and removing it. And what I'm doing is, as I'm drawing, I'm looking at where I think the light source is coming from and whether that would then cast a shadow across Wonder Woman's body or the skirt. And remember with fabric that as your body curves away from the fabric, for instance with the thighs, then the shadow is going to grow in size as it wraps around that surface. So I'm going in here without the lines to try and correct some little errors that I could see. And you can see me here just adding the glow from the Lasso of Truth. And I'm picking very carefully the lines I want to emphasize there. Later on, you'll see me add some blue to the image. I really like when I'm doing a drawing to add a secondary light somewhere that picks out the opposite side of the form to the main source of light. And it's a technique you see used in 3D a lot. And a lot of the time it's not realistic, but it really does serve a purpose, and it picks that character out. It pulls them forward in the composition. And that is something that's really important to me, that the character is centre stage, because that's what I love. I love drawing characters. I love drawing dynamic characters. And although this pose isn't particularly dynamic, had I redrawn it, I'd have probably pushed the pelvis forward a little bit so that she was kind of had a bit more of a line of action there. Now, what you won't have seen, because it was so quick, is I've added a number of gradients to the image. And they're going on and off here, which is why you're seeing all this kind of flashing going on. The gradients are from cool to warm, from the bottom to the top of the picture, just to draw your eye a bit more. Anyway, that's the finished picture. I hope there's some useful insight there for you. By all means, get in touch if you'd like to discuss the picture, and please do like and subscribe. There's more tutorials incoming. Thank you very much.